Hi, welcome to Planetary Calendar's Astro Portraits. I'm Lahni DeAmicis, one of the calendar's astrologers. Our subject this week is Stephen Colbert, the famous host on The Late Show, the comedian for many years on The Daily Show, and then in between on The Colbert Report. It's a very interesting chart to us because in the last 4 years, he has been, from 2016 to 2020, has been a major commenter on the current, or you might say the president's administration during that period of time. And he stood out much more than many of the other late night hosts. And it was really a very and sometimes audacious and brave stance that he took when you realize that those late night shows are meant for partially news, but really mostly, entertainment. But I think one of the reasons why he did have such a political tilt was because he had come there from the Colbert Report, which was a parody on the Fox News the commentators, people like Bill O'Reilly and Beck, people like that who would get up there and just sound off. And it was a put up from that. And so he became very political in the process of doing that. So when he came over to his new show with Jon Stewart as one of his executive producers, he continued in that theme. Now, it's a very interesting chart in that it's very Western. In other words, a lot of the planets are over in the Western Hemisphere, including the Sun. The Sun at 23 degrees Taurus, in the same sign as Jupiter, Mars, and Mercury. So that collection is called a stellium, when you get a group of planets together. So it shows a strong emphasis in that. What's interesting is that the Sun, even though it's not by the descendant exactly, is angular. In other words, it's clockwise from where the descendant would be. So it has a lot of leverage. Also, up at the top of the chart are Uranus and Pluto in Virgo. And this is a generational thing. There's a real intense generation born about that time. He was born in 64, where these two planets were in the same sign in Virgo. It's a real interesting generation. And his is also angular, just clockwise of the midheaven in Virgo. And being in Virgo, that midheaven is the flag above your castle. It says what you do. Virgo is, after all, a communication sign. It's Mercury ruled. It's all about communication. His Sun, Jupiter, Mars, and Mercury are in the 6th house, the house related to Virgo and communication. In many ways, he sees his life as a life of service. Now, of course, this is very entertaining because he has Sagittarius rising, which is, a very outgoing, expressive, fun position. But he still sees himself as a servant to others. His Venus is in Cancer, and his moon is in Gemini. Now, the Gemini moon can't help but want to have fun. It just loves to chat. And for him, it's in the 7th house. Remember, a lot of stuff over in the Western Hemisphere, the hemisphere of the partner. The 6th, 7th, 8th house, the Venus is in the 8th house. It's all on the partner side. This is one of the reasons why he makes such a tremendously good host. When you come onto his show, he partners with you. He's not an adversary. He's not someone who's saying, I'm here and you're there. He's saying, let's see how we can put this together and make this work for both of us. And you can see it in his appeal. Now, admittedly, Taurus is a very charming sign. It's ruled by Venus, which means it goes back to that Venus in Cancer, which is a very loving position. And many times when people come on, what does he do? He feeds them, or he gives them drinks. Many, many times he's pouring drinks for folks. Well, that's the Venus in Cancer in the 8th house, the house of power. And this is part of his power over people. For one thing, I know he happens to love to cook, Well, he likes being able to manage people, and that Venus, which is highly elevated in the chart in the 8th house, is about his ability to manage people. The North Node is also in that house, conjunct the Venus partile, meaning the same degree, So this ability to express love and creativity and feed people, when people come onto the show, for instance, they're there because they're there to promote something. He's helping feed them. He's helping them to feed their passion. And that's a part of his power to do that. So that this ability to work and partner with other people, the moon in the 7th house, the ability to be of service to other people, the sun, Jupiter, Mars, and Mercury in the 6th house, the ability to manage people gracefully, Venus in the 8th house with the North Node. That's really where he comes from. The Sagittarius rising, that's something you see a lot of times in people who are in performance. They like being over the top a little bit. The Pluto and Uranus at the midheaven in the 10th house, he sees himself as a change agent. He sees someone as himself, as Uranus loves to change things. Pluto transforms. Virgo is about the common person. So he sees himself as standing up and changing things for the common people. It's probably one of the reasons why he was so hard on President Trump, because President Trump was an elitist. He gave his best tax deals to the wealthy. He wanted to move I'm sure he wanted to move his golden-plated toilet into the White House. I mean, you can't get much more elitist than that. And this is something that offended that Uranus, Pluto at the midheaven in Virgo for him, something he feels very personally, and his sun in the 6th house, the house of the common man. Now, it's interesting if you look at his life, and this is one of the great things about doing these portraits, because they're meant to be educational. They're meant to help you understand how charts function. When you have someone like Stephen Colbert, who has a history, you can go online and find his history. You can find out about his family. You can see his life played out. You can look at the chart and see, well, how is the chart playing out? And one of the things you do see in the 4th house, he's got Vesta in Pisces. Well, we know he's a very devout Catholic, or at least he speaks very much about this, about growing up in a Catholic family. That's Vesta in Pisces. Pisces is the symbol of Christianity. Vesta, the enduring flame. It's also conjunct within 1 degree of Saturn, his father. Well, Pisces is also the sign of the spirit world. His father died when he was very young, and he's spoken about this many times. He comes from a very big family, a lot of kids, and his father died when he was very young. And he still, is very aware of that loss, that enduring flame. And remember, the Vesta a lot of times has to do with keeping the flame alive for your elders, for the generations before, for their beliefs, is core to who he is. What's interesting is that also in the same house is Chiron, which is about being wounded. And this was a spiritual wound to him at his home level. And Astrea, which was also a great love of the law. That was from his, and a belief in the law. He has a strong belief in the law, so he has a strong belief in what's fair. Remember, Taurus is ruled by Venus. Venus also rules Libra, the sign of the laws. Taurus in many ways is about gravity, and there's nothing quite as leveling as gravity. His part of fortune is in the 12th house. Part of fortune has to do with our interface with Earth. It's in Scorpio. It's in the 12th house. 12th house is the studio. It's behind the scenes. He really is, I suspect, I don't know, because this isn't really written about, but I suspect he really is quite a force behind the scenes. He also has Neptune, Juno, and Pallas there, which means he has developed really good skills at managing people, managing information, managing the image of things from behind the scenes. I suspect before he ever goes on stage, before he ever walks out there for his performance, he knows his subjects inside and out. He's really managed his resources well. And interestingly, he has the South Node in the second house in Capricorn with Ceres. And always look for where Ceres is. Ceres is the largest of the asteroids and is oftentimes underestimated in her influence. It's about where we act as a shepherd. One, he's got it in the house of money. Good place for it to be. But it also is about managing things as a father. And it's interesting because his willingness to adapt technology, that's the Uranus and Pluto above high in the chart, the flag. His willingness to manage his family well, right? His willingness to take care of the details, all that stuff in the sixth house. Well, didn't this come out during the pandemic when suddenly he was doing his show from home? And of all the different hosts who work from home, no one did it like Stephen Colbert. He got the whole family there. He had his kids involved. He finally got other crew to come in, but he adapted very quickly, and the shows got better and better. And what's funny was he was talking to other people at their homes, and it became this wonderful conversation between himself and his home with his wife, Evie, sitting right there laughing at his jokes, right? Managing his family effectively, including his kids in the process, including his wife in the process, and then talking to people in their other homes where he naturally made them his partner to help engage them, Moon and Gemini, engaging them in conversation. So it's very interesting. It's also interesting that his other compadre, you might say, Jimmy Fallon, who is on The Tonight Show, is a Virgo, another earth sign. These are two of the three earth signs, whose chart is also very, very heavy in the Western Hemisphere. What's also interesting is where Stephen has Sagittarius rising, which is ruled by Jupiter. Jimmy Fallon, the Virgo, has Pisces rising, the other Jupiter-ruled sign. So they both have this expansiveness right there where everyone can see it. And yet they both have this heavy concentration in the Western Hemisphere, which is all about making partnerships and working with other people. So make sure you pay attention when we do the one on Jimmy Fallon, because that's going to be another very interesting portrait. So we hope you found that interesting and illuminating. Please come see us on Tuesdays when we post these portraits. Come see us on Fridays when we do our forecast. You can always go to planetarycalendar.com to get your calendars, and definitely go visit Planetary Calendar Astrology on YouTube and subscribe, because it helps us keep bringing these to you. Thanks so much, and be well.